What's up guys, it's Dan, and I'm building a Gundam. I'm making the body. I start with the lower body since it's the smallest part and I want it to be snug on me. I make a poster board template that reminds me of a carry-out box. I transfer the template onto some 10mm HD foam. I beveled the corners with my sanding drum and reinforced the foam with some thick styrene strips. To put it on, I created an overlap joint on the front that's held together with some Velcro. This joint also makes the lower body adjustable. Now I work on the upper section of the lower body. The panels angle as you can see as it wraps around the lower section. To space the upper section from the lower section, I cut a double beveled strip of floor mat foam. I also add small strips of 2mm foam in some areas to allow the panels to angle outward when glued on. To bevel cut a long piece by hand, I set up the knife tip into the center crack of the folding table I'm using. I place a ruler on top of the foam, creating the angle, and I run the knife against the ruler while keeping the tip in the table's center crack. After making poster board templates for the upper section, I transfer them to 6mm HD foam, and I also bevel cut the corners. Then I sand down the panels to match the angle of the bevel cut foam strip, as well as to do some cleanup and touch up in some areas. And here's how it's looking right now. At the moment it looks like the abdomen of any Gundam or Federation mobile suit. I move on to the upper body, starting with the cockpit area. The upper and lower body will actually be separate pieces, which makes making the upper body a challenge, since I can't attach anything to the lower body while I'm making it. I transfer the pattern to 6mm HD foam. I mock it up against the body to see how it'll all look. I'll need to make notches on them so they can snug up against the lower body. I keep putting pieces together until I have the base structure of the cockpit area. Because these foam pieces are big and still curl from being rolled up when packaged, I use more styrene strips to help keep them straight. They also add reinforcement. I add more pieces such as the top frame of the cockpit opening and the panel above it, which has an increasing seam as it goes up. I add even more pieces, almost completing the cockpit section and starting on the chest vents. I needed to get the cockpit section established so I have a reference piece to build around. The side of the body is next. It has a slight bend that runs through it. After making a poster board template, I transfer it to 10mm HD foam and I bevel it to create the bend. And I attach it to the rest of the body using contact cement. I know I'll have to cut a big hole into it to fit my arms through. So here's where I am right now with the upper body. Looks pretty sick, but this is wrong. I've got some issues with it. When I put the lower body on, this doesn't sink down low enough. And there's a gap here between the upper and lower body, like this, when I wear it, when I need it to be lower, like that, because it's wrong. Now what's wrong with it is the front here, and that's actually making everything else wrong. This needs to be at a steeper slope and longer, which will increase the height of this, which will help it sit down lower, and that should be fine after that. So, closer, it looks cool with the whole geometry and everything. There's a back, very simple. So I need to redo this whole front here, which means I'll need to redo these panels on the sides. I can probably reuse this. I'll need to rework the side here, and I also need to add a height to it so that'll be opened up more, because these up here are supposed to be about parallel, but as you can see they're not. I'm gonna try to do this in a way that will use most of what I have here. I'll have to replace these panels. I know it sounds bad because I have to cut new panels, but these are good sized panels, like right here. I can reuse those for something else, another part, so not a total waste. But yeah, let me go ahead and correct that. So I'm starting to make the changes. I'm not done yet, but it's working. As you can see the difference here, this is like much higher than this. I still have like the original panels there. I'm going to be changing those out. But right now it actually meets up right here and then down here, which will be changed as well. I have to do the sides still, but I do have like the front and top area here kind of established. But yeah, it meets up on the front here, and then this will actually meet up on along the sides, so it's working. Okay, I'm back. It took a few days or so. Here's the new body. So I increased the slope on the front here, made it longer as well. As you can see, the sides are now taller, so now this actually does meet up with the lower body very well. There's still some other things I need to work on, but for the most part, this is the base of the upper body. That looks sick. And this will just go on top of me, like that. Now, one thing that I did with this upper body was I made it wider than my own shoulder width. That's what I see sometimes with some cosplays in terms of trying to maintain Gundam proportions. This is also what I see Uber's cosplay do. He makes his bodies wider than his shoulder width, and that gives the illusion of the head being smaller and in proportion to the body. Now he does work the upper arms to work with it. Here's some pictures of his ARC 79G that he made. The body is wider than his shoulder width, and as you can see, his upper arm pieces were made in a way that it makes his shoulder width look wider than what his shoulder width actually is. And that's the method I'll be using for the upper arm when I get to that. But yeah, as you can see, my shoulders are kind of inside the body. They were more inside. I took an inch off on the sides here because it was too far out. Now with Odin's Gundam cosplay, he scaled the body down, so that way the upper body matches the width of Joe's upper body. And that does make the body smaller, which makes the head look bigger, but that's probably more comfortable and more practical than making it wider like this, because I'm gonna have to be walking around with my arms out like that, so it looks right. So wearing that suit is probably more comfortable, and this one will be. But I'm going for the look, which is why I made the body big. Let me show you how wide the head is to the body. As you can see, the head was also made to be small as well, but that is the proportions of the head to the body. Now I also reworked the lower body. I added a lumbar pad here because everyone's spine curves in, and if I didn't have that, this body would actually like tilt back and it wouldn't line up with the upper body that well. So I have this padding here. I have other pads here that I'm going to install on the sides here, so that way when I rest my arms down, it won't push this in. And I also increased the bevels on the lower body right there, so now it looks a lot better because I put the upper body on it. This looked too boxy and flat, so now it's got a little more dimension there, as you can see. That's pretty much how the upper and lower body will be. What do you think of that? It looks pretty sick, huh? Now the foam is still quite flimsy and still warping since it was rolled up when I bought it. So I went to Walmart and got a bunch of their 88-cent cutting boards. This is polyethylene. I'll be cutting this stuff. It's fairly light to help reinforce the body and keep some of the panels nice and flat, especially the back. You can see it kind of warps and bows and whatever, and bulges. But yeah, that should help keep the panels straight. I am a Gundam. Now on the lower body, I will be increasing some of the panels on here. Will be going higher, so that way it'll always stay tucked underneath the upper body. So I'm just going to keep continuing on this, cleaning it up, adding reinforcement. I used 10mm foam to increase the height of the lower body in some areas. I also add the paddings to the sides. I sand down all the bevels with my sanding drum. I also drew in the panel lines with a pencil just to see how they'd look. I get all the collar pieces made and completed. And I decided to use magnets to connect the upper and lower body together, so that way they would always be lined up. I use small screws on some of the magnets just to make sure they stay on. Alright, I'm gonna throw this on real quick, show you how it looks. Upper body. Yeah, I do need to like fiddle with it a bit, make sure it goes down. So the magnets work really well. I'm only using 3 sets because I don't want it to be like too secure, but I want it to be secure. I just don't want it to move around too much and get like dislodged and crooked, especially in the back. You can see it's lined up because I don't want to be walking around while it's not lined up. And yeah, with this on, I can't see my feet. Yeah, what do you think of that so far? Look at this thing. It's a good size. This is long. It's like a runway. In fact, if I ever take the head off, I can just place it right here. Arm movement is limited. I can only go this high. If I go any higher, you know, that'll happen. And I'll be wearing the head. So I can only go that high up. I can only touch my hands. As I go lower, then I can reach more. Back. Yeah, that's my arm movement. It's plenty. This will just go on. Front magnet. On, back magnets. And it's able to be one piece, which is great for storing it, because if I didn't have the magnets in the back especially, it would just sink. And I know I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at the screen, so I'm just talking to you guys like, so this is the body, you can see how great it looks. So I'm so used to looking at the screen, and I can barely see where the camera is on the phone. I know where it is, because I'm looking at it right now, just can barely see the dot that it is. Just like the head, looking at this, freaking crazy. Because this is, I know it's just my opinion. Oh look, I'm in it. I'm wearing it. I know this is just my opinion, but it's spot on. It's not 100%, but this is the look of the figure. The chest vents are next. I made left and right pairs out of 10mm foam. I also made them long on purpose so I can cut them to fit the body. And to help keep them from bending, I added a strip of styrene to the back of each vent. I put them on one side at a time so I can look at the completed side and line up the other side as best I can to make them match. Not too bad for eyeballing. Next up is a machine cannon collar. I mock it up with paper first to give you my pattern because it's not a simple piece. It has areas that change in both angle and radius as it wraps around the back of the body. And I transfer it to 6mm HD foam along with 3D printed machine gun tips. I also add the detail using 2mm HD foam. I also finish up the cockpit area, and I make it open, so you can see a little dual Maxwell inside, along with some cockpit detail. Here's a closer look of it. Just a little cardboard box that I shaped. I didn't have access to a color printer, so I put it in Photoshop, lightened it up to give me the outlines. Then I just Sharpied all the lines and painted, actually used acrylic paints, mixed them up to achieve the colors. And then I had to Sharpie the lines in again since I painted them over. But yeah, that's the result. And I'm using diffused polycarbonate here. Same stuff I'm using for the cameras for the mohawk on the head. And these are gonna light up so you can see what's in there. It'll light up when the door opens. I have normally open momentary switches that I'll use for that. So yeah, this will just go in the body. It'll be weird having a little dude just in my gut. To clean up and fine-tune everything with my sanding drum and use Alex Flex where needed. I also burnt in most of the panel lines with a wood burner. I apply 2 to 3 coats of Plastidip, white on the lower body and black on the upper body, of course. So I plan on taking a different approach to painting. I'm not going to be using any of the spray paints, the Krylon and Montana Gold, because even though they're acrylic, they do crack. You don't see the cracks until you bend the foam, and they're really subtle because it's all the same color. I just don't want that to happen. So I'm going to be using Flat FX paints. Odin uses this as well. This is their smooth satin. This is a flexible acrylic that is quite resilient actually. I remember Odin describing a prop that he made that had to be handled a number of times and wiped and sanitized as well, and it was able to withstand all that. There was no top coat, I believe. It was just wiping right on the paint, and the paint held up. So that's a good sign of product quality. But yeah, I'm going to be using this for the body and the rest of the suit. And yes, I'm going to have to repaint the head as well, just so it matches. That's no problem. I'm going to be airbrushing this too. The company actually says you can airbrush this if you mix a 1-to-1 ratio of the paint and window cleaner. I have Windex. I've never tried it before. This is my first time using the paint as well. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing that. This is their carbon, their 8-ounce carbon, which is their black. I did mix some of their white, which is their blizzard, into this just so I can achieve an almost black color, because I still don't want the Deathscythe to be straight up black, because it was never straight up black to me. There was enough room in here, so I kind of just almost filled it with white, and then I just shook it like crazy. And it's fine to do that in a big batch, just so I don't have to keep mixing paints and then there's an inconsistency with the color. Now for the white, I plan on mixing some of the black with it as well, because I don't want the white to be straight up white either. I want it to be like a somewhat tinted white, very, very, very light gray. So let's get to painting. I spray the colors a good 2 to 3 coats as well. Then I paint the accent colors with a brush, such as the yellow for the chest vents and white for the collar. Now it really feels like I'm working on a large gunpla. And here it is. Look at this thing. Pretty sick. Pretty crazy. Back. Very plain. So yeah, I've got the body. I've got the head. Now I know what you're waiting for me to strap everything on. Well, let's do it. And there you go. What do you think of that? Pretty crazy. Obviously the chin hits the collar here and the sides, so I have to make sure to lift my head when I'm looking around. Dang, I can kind of see. I have the tint on. It's kind of reflecting like other things, but I can kind of see the camera. Let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Let me know if you're enjoying this build. I am. It's been pretty crazy. A lot of fun too. I'm still fogging this up. Leave it off for now. But yeah, pretty cool. I'm gonna take the head off. Kind of have to make sure the magnets actually line up, because now that everything's painted, it's kind of like rubbing more and creating more friction on the parts. So I kind of have to work it more to get it on, but pretty cool. I have the cockpit taped up for now. You're gonna see what I'm gonna do with that in the last video. There's a good amount of stuff that's gonna be for the last video, and you'll hear that as I go through the making the different parts. But yeah, that's badass. Here's a little side-by-side of the figure and what I made, and you can tell I don't mess around. This off, lift this up, take this. I really like the overlap joint on here, because when it's on, you know, it still looks like it's one piece, like almost seamless. And the upper body does cover the middle seam there. I know I'm gonna have to make a stand for all of this. You know, most Gundam references are based off the Gunpla when people make Gundam cosplays. This is not based off a Gunpla. This is based off a figure. So that's just a weird thing. But it's like I'm making a giant Gunpla. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I am using a scale multiplier for when I measure the figure and multiply it to be my size. For the head, it's pretty much 14. It's 14 times the size of the figure. The body, I didn't want it to be too big, but a good size. This is 13.5. So, and overall, with all the other parts, I'm gonna try to keep them close, just so it's not too distorted and too weird looking. So the head is 14, this is 13.5. I'm not really leaning on it, I'm just posing because I can push it down like that. But yeah, like I said, let me know what you think of this build in the comments below. Subscribe, help support what I'm doing. It'll be a big help. Give it a thumbs up. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this body video. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and be safe. I'll see you guys in the next one.